Okay, so here we are again talking about organization. This is Organizing Your Body Paragraphs Part 2. And in this one we're going to talk to you about how when you pick your claims, you really need to be thought out and really organized about the way you decide to put those claims into your paper. A well thought out plan can save you from having a lot of reorganization and drafts to do. See that garbage can with all those drafts in there? You do not want to be that person at midnight throwing drafts of paper into the garbage can. So when you begin planning, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. What type of an essay are you writing? Argumentative, narrative, lab report, book review, and obviously in this slide we're talking about argumentative essays. But as you're writing, also who is your audience? Because that's going to help you also plan for how you're going to put those claims in your paper. For example, if I'm writing to a board of adults, I might choose to put my claims in my paper a little bit differently than if I was writing to a group of school children, or to cool Professor Harrison Ford, or to Santa Claus. So when you look at your claims, you need to think about, is this person going to be a novice about my topic? Does this person already know a lot about my topic? Am I trying to catch them right away with something very interesting? Or do I save that interesting claim to kind of bring around a little hook in the middle of the paper? How are you organizing those claims to make your paper fit the audience?
So we're really talking about order. So you have your claims. What order are you going to put them in? That's really it.
That's it. Yeah.
So how are you going to order them to have your most impact on your reader? And like Mrs. V just said, depending on who your reader is, you might order those claims differently in your paper. Okay, so here's a sample. And this is a sample paper as if we were writing about global warming. So if I was writing about global warming, I would have done a whole bunch of research, and I would have developed the claims that I think are the strongest. Here are 3 claims that we developed from our research. First of all, that the main source of excess greenhouse gas is from human use of fossil fuels. So basically, humans are the cause of this problem.
Using gas and oil and cars and that kind of stuff.
Secondly, polar bears are losing their natural habitat because of rising sea levels. And then thirdly, severe weather patterns and an increase in big storms is because of
all this global warming, because of all this excess human stuff that we're doing.
And then we've also selected a claim on the other side that we're going to argue back against, that the Earth naturally goes through heating and cooling cycles, and we have some evidence that proves that that's actually not what's happening now. So the scientific evidence says that, yeah, it does go through natural heating and cooling cycles, but not to the degree. That's not what's happening currently, and that's not an excuse for global warming. So this is what we're going to put in our paper, but we're not quite sure what order we want to put these paragraphs. We know that each one of these is going to be a paragraph, so we want to teach you how you can think about your claims to put them in the right order to make the most impact.
So now if I'm writing to a group of peers or a group of kids that don't really know anything about global warming, starting off my first paragraph talking about fossil fuels would be really confusing. It might be easier to hook that kind of an audience by first talking about fuzzy little polar bears, all right? If I'm talking to a group of experts on fossil fuels or people who work for an oil company or something, then I might start first talking about fossil fuels because they have a really good idea about what that is. That's their livelihood, or that's what they've been researching. And then I would go into the other topics. So you can see here, based on who my audience is going to determine the order in which I put my claims.
So if I'm going to assume for this, because I'm going to show you what I'm thinking here with these paragraphs, I'm writing to regular people, just out there. I'm trying to make the case that global warming is important. I'm writing to regular people, not some science expert. So I'm thinking my first paragraph, I want to do this polar bears one because I've just did my introduction, and I want to then continue to get that emotional appeal, like they're picturing the poor polar bear out on the ice. So in my writing, I'm going to really play off that emotion. Like I'm going to make them feel upset about this issue. So I want to start with polar bears because that's my strategy. I'm going to be playing the emotions. All right. Then I feel like because severe weather patterns also has an emotional appeal, we could talk about the damage and devastation of homes.
And all the snow that we've had and the big storms we've had and the days we've missed from school.
So I'm thinking
over the last couple of years.
I'm thinking that I can then continue my emotional appeal in my second paragraph. So they kind of flow. Emotion, emotion. And then this third one is a little bit different. It's kind of like the main source of greenhouse gas. So like emotion, emotion, and it's our fault. So I feel like we get them all upset, and then we say, okay, and it's because
stop driving your cars, people.
So I feel like this order of these 3 paragraphs really makes sense, that I'm going to hit them up with polar bear, like fuzzy white polar bears, and make them cry, and then make them cry about all the stuff that is happening,
Make
and
them
then
scared that their houses are all going to flood and
yeah.
wash
So
away.
I have a really emotional appeal here in my paper, and then in my last paragraph, my last claim, I'm going to say that this can be avoided because it's really our fault if we change some behavior. I feel like, I know this is kind of the way most people would do this, but I feel like my counterclaim, when I'm going to talk about why it's not a natural heating and cooling cycle, I do feel like this counterclaim works best as my fourth body paragraph. I don't feel like there's a spot in here where I could like make it fit
elsewhere.
before. So I feel like that's going to be at the end before my conclusion. So this is the way I would order this paper based on my strategy. You may have selected a different order based on your particular
strategy. And based
strategy.
on your audience, too. If your audience is somebody who's totally different, then your order might be very different.
But I think for me, and the way I'm going to write this paper, like, this is how I'm going to do it. But notice how I didn't just start writing and like throwing them in randomly. I've put at least some thought into how the order I'm going to place this. That's what we expect you to do.
And we're going to ask you to tell us what your thought process was when you decided how to put your body paragraphs in your paper.
We expect that if this is your goal, if you're working on organization of paragraphs, that you would think about this before you'd write, and it wouldn't just be like, oh, I put it first because that was first in the book, kind of thing.
Okay.
All right, so let's give it a shot. Why don't you guys get out your place to write this down? So you're gonna create a sample outline and explain why you've picked an order for these 4 claims. The argument is that school buses should have seatbelts, and your 3 claims that you're going to make in support of your argument are here: that seatbelts will reduce injuries in case of accidents, that seatbelts make parents feel safe, that their kids are at least in a safe place, and that seatbelts limit the number of kids per seat, which is will automatically make things safer because less kids will be crowded in. And that the argument, your counterclaim argument, is going to be that the number of injuries on buses is very low, and you're going to have to counter that claim some way. So what we want you to do now is select an order for these 4. So put them in whatever order you think would be most effective.
And tell us who your audience is.
And then explain why this would be the most effective, the way you've selected, why would that be the most effective way to order these paragraphs?
Right, so are you writing this paper to the Board of Education? Are you writing it to other kids? Is it going as a opinion piece in the school newspaper? And then once we know, or once you pick your audience, then now select how are you going to put these claims in order. So
you're finished with the video. You can pause it and do that now. And I hope you see that the way you order the paragraph, although it's a simple thing, it's kind of a small thing,
it can
important. Really have a big impact on the overall effectiveness of your entire paper.
Great. You can begin now.